get started. We're already talking. So the first thing that I want to thank so many of the advocates, Alliance for Quality Education, Senator Robert Jackson, since he was in the city council as a chair of education, Assemblymember Charles Barron, and so many of our activists who have fought and organizers who have fought for the full funding of foundation aid, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, CFE. We are on our way to fully fund. You can put the mask down, baby. It's okay. So for education, let's start with the three pillars. The first pillar of meeting our constituents' basic needs in the state of New York. First, with education, I give it an A minus. A minus. Foundation aid, according to what we are doing this year, will be completely met for the next couple of years, next 3 years.
Paper.
I'm sorry?
I want a paper.
I'll give you paper when we're finished. Is that okay?
No, I want
Please?
paper.
Okay, just go outside and get a piece of paper then. Thank you. But it took us so many years. We have lost generations. At least 3 cohorts of generations have been lost because we were unable to meet the foundation aid for the last 10 years. So even though we're doing the right thing now, because of the lost times and because we're not doing it entirely in one shot and it's taking us nevertheless a few more years to get there, I give it an A minus. Now, the next second pillar that is required to meet everyone's basic needs on the state of New York is housing. Housing is a human right. We have been hearing this for years now. Public housing, it should be our main priority in everything that we do. Everything starts with public and social housing. We all know the big number, the shortage. It's $40 billion to retrofit our public housing, and to make sure that all the capital needs are met. But unfortunately, in the state budget, we're only putting in a couple of $100 million, which is not good enough. Hazel's back. Let me give her a piece of paper. I'm going to give you a few of these cards. You can use this. Here's a pen. You want to sit here and draw next to me, or you want to draw in the other room?
I want to go in the other room.
Okay, go in the other room. Can you close the door, sweetie? Thank you. So, housing, we get a C. This is the grade that I am giving in the state budget because we have given away billions of dollars for unnecessary economic development projects, and we have not done enough for our public housing. Next up, healthcare, the third pillar of meeting everyone's basic human needs. We did not do nearly enough for healthcare. We did not come close to meeting the needs of our most vulnerable members, the people who have been left behind in the stimulus, immigrants, migrant workers. Even though during this pandemic, we all know that we are as strong as our most vulnerable members in our community, we still can't seem to figure out how to provide healthcare as a human right in the richest state in the country. So healthcare for this budget, I give it a D. Nursing homes. We've been talking about reforming nursing homes for months now. Thank you, Attorney General Tish James, for putting out your amazing report back in January that have revitalized the discussions around all the things that we've been pushing back on the Governor Andrew Cuomo's administration, starting from giving out corporate legal immunity at the peak of the pandemic to some of the worst nursing home operators in the state of New York, to sending 9,000 COVID positive patients from his deadly unilateral decision on March 25th of last year. 6,000 new patients were transferred into unprepared nursing homes at the peak of the pandemic. 3,000 residents were returned back to nursing homes. But this time in the budget, we focused on getting this right. We repealed the legal immunity, and we went in the other direction of holding these facilities accountable. Thank you to the chair of the health committee, Dick Gottfried, who pushed hard to put in the mandatory investment toward care, to paying for direct care in the facilities by 70% of the funding must be now allocated to direct care in nursing homes, and 40% of the benefits for Medicare, Medicaid, etc., must be spent on hiring staff members. This is still, compared to other states, at a lower rate, and I hope that in the next few years we can truly get profits out of the nursing home and long-term facility industry. In the state of New York, 65% of the industry is for profits or driven by profits, and that in itself is a fundamental problem, especially as we see now in the middle of an emergency or pandemic, when the facilities must prioritize care and saving people's lives. But if they're given the tools, they will choose profits over lives, and everyone who supported and enabled that outcome now must be held accountable, because 15,000 plus lives were lost due to deadly decisions during this pandemic. But overall, in the budget and the policies that we're putting together, I give nursing homes a B in the last few weeks. Next, workers, immigrant workers. Thanks to the hundreds and hundreds of advocate groups, starting with Make the Road, Align, Communities for Change, and all the groups who put their bodies on the line to show the rest of the state of New York and the lawmakers what our neighbors and constituents are going through during this pandemic. We were able to successfully put together a $2 billion plus fund for excluded workers. This is something that I want to credit the Speaker, Carl Hastie, and his team, the Ways and Means Chair, the Chair of the Labor Committee, and all the lawmakers, all my colleagues who were in tough positions around this issue, who may represent more moderate marginal seats, but were able to be brave enough to stand up for migrant workers and immigrants, who recognizing that they are part of our economy, that if we do not take care of them, there is no economy. And all these months as we led up to this moment, there were instances, and even in the last day of getting this done, of many people fear-mongering that we are supporting a population that shouldn't even be here. And to those people who still feel that way, let me remind you that we're not just making a compassionate plea here. Our workers, our neighbors, they pay taxes, over $1 billion of taxes to the state of New York. And also, when we invest in them, the return on that investment is 2, 3, 4 times back into our local economy. In other words, when we invest in this one-time injection to excluded workers who might be undocumented by status, they will spend that money back into our communities. They will pay for small business in the local shops, go shop at the small businesses, pay for care, pay for tutoring, pay for all number of things where we know that that dollar is being recirculated in our local communities. So overall, for excluded workers, I give it a B plus, but because we still have not meet all the needs of the workers who will continue to be left behind because we could not get the full funding of the $3.5 billion that we actually needed to take care of the workers who have put their lives in, to make sure that we had an economy for the last 10 months. So we must go back and do more for them. Small businesses. I do recognize the hard work of our chair of small business and our central staff for raising the money to close to $1 billion of grants and assistance programs for the mom and pop and small businesses who have been struggling. I represent the most number of small businesses in any district in the state of New York, and I know that they are going through struggle after struggle, unable to pay their rent, negotiating their leases with their landlords every single day, trying to get by. So the $1 billion will be a great help to them. But again, we needed a little bit more, and we could have done a little bit more to help assist them early on in the pandemic. Already, more than 30, 40, up to 60% of the industries in my district have shut down. And some of these restaurants that have been part of our communities for such a long time are unable to make a comeback. So we already lost so many small businesses. So with that, I give small businesses a B minus in the budget because we definitely need to do a lot more to make sure that our local economy is taken care of. Next, economic development. These are traditionally the big ticket subsidized programs, also known as corporate giveaways or corporate welfare programs that give out billions and billions of dollars in financing every single year to multinational mega corporations that have proven time after time that most of the time they do not meet the expectations or the requirements of the subsidies that we give out to them. But yet, we continue to double down on this outdated economic development model. For the last many, many years, between the city and the state of New York, we spent between 3 to 9 to $10 billion a year on corporate giveaways. There was a point last year when in the city of New York, we are spending close to $500,000 a job under the guise of economic development. And again, this year, we have succumbed to the pressures of some of these industries, particularly the big real estate industry that have close ties with the executive. When you look at projects like the Penn Station expansion, where we're giving away billions of dollars of financing, the expansion of the Midtown Manhattan. It is money that could be spent again in education or public housing, where we know the return on investment is tangibly greater than giving away to places like Penn Station. So economic development, I give it a C plus, and I hope that we can finally recognize that these mega deals and mega projects do not yield the type of returns and jobs that we think that they're able to deliver for the state of New York, and we can go in a different direction. For example, I think we can actually, we're at a point where we can actually deliver the first comprehensive public banking infrastructure in the country. There's only two public banks in the country, the Federal Reserve and North Dakota, the state public bank. New York, and being the financial capital of the world, can show that how it could actually be done and be able to finance public housing and all the public infrastructure projects that deserve the public capital and public input that it desperately needs to make sure that we have public sovereignty again in the state of New York. So hopefully we can actually transform economic development for in the next couple of years to get us to that point. My daughter is back. Hazel, you okay? I'm about to finish. Where are you going? Do you need something? Okay. Here you go. Again, this is my daughter, Hazel Kim, who wants some scotch tape. So I'll give you some scotch tape. And we're gonna wrap up in 1 minute. Here's another. Don't put it up there, baby. Where are you gonna put it up? Here's one more. Okay. And lastly, we have revenues. As I have been talking about progressive taxes since last year. I have joined my colleagues, advocates, DSA Debt and Finance Working Group to do multiple workshops, town halls, you name it. And this isn't something that came out of nowhere. We've been coordinating and with economists, attorneys, tax lawyers for months, if not years, to come up with the comprehensive package of 6 bills that would generate between 50 to 70 billion dollars a year. This is instead of looking at the needs and figuring out how to raise revenue, what we did was look at the loopholes of all the money that we're giving away to corporations, to the 1% that they do not need, and came up with this package. In other words, we reverse wired and made a case of how much money we're leaving behind to continue the concentrated extreme wealth in the state of New York, versus the way how we do budgeting, which is looking and figuring out how we need to spend and negotiating against ourselves on the spending side, and then in the back end making a case for raising revenue the various ways. So I believe that starting next year, we need to go back and start thinking about revenues differently, the way that we're doing it, with the goal of looking at how much wealth we are giving away and as a result perpetuating the extreme concentration of wealth, which is further making social mobility impossible in the state of New York. In fact, we need, as a state, the state of New York, we rank last in upward and social mobility in the entire country. One of the last places in all developed countries around the world. So while we have the highest state GDP and extreme wealth, we have the worst poverty and worst social mobility. So we were able to claim that we tax the rich this year, and there's a number of mainstream articles that came out and celebrated these wins as progressive taxes and how we took steps to deconcentrate wealth. But let me remind you that because we did not tax and address the problems of capital gains, of corporate giveaways and corporate taxes, and heirs tax that fuels intergenerational hoarding of wealth, and lastly, a real wealth tax. We didn't address any of those things. So what's going to happen if we do not fix those loopholes is that the wealthier you are, the more you're likely to transfer your wealth in different asset classes to dodge paying taxes. So that's why it's critical that we go back to Albany and we look at where these shortfalls are, and and properly address them. Otherwise, we will continue to see extreme concentration of wealth that is causing some of the declining social conditions that we're witnessing right now. Many of us have warned the state that all the signs of heightened violence and heightened hatred were there pre-COVID. We've had 18 to 20 months of household debt increasing in the state of New York. We've had 80% of New Yorkers living paycheck to paycheck before COVID. We've had the worst, again, upward and social mobility in the state, in the nation, perhaps one of the worst in the world. All this means is that despite us telling people that New York is the place of opportunities, people are coming here realizing that it's been a sham, that it is not the land of opportunities. New immigrants in places like my district, they're coming here, they're waking up and they're realizing no matter how hard I work, no matter the blood, sweat, and tears that I put in to this place, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, I will never be able to beat someone who was born of privilege, who was born on third base. That's what people are waking up to. And traditional economics and economists believe in taking care of the top 1% because their capital is more flexible, they're more spendable, expendable. So they fear that their capital will leave and will flee to different places. But we reached a point where the workers, the immigrants, the people who actually make the economy, they're the ones who are giving up. They're the ones who are fleeing. And without people, there is no economy. So with that, I give revenues a D minus, and I hope that we can go back and truly address the concentration, the extreme